Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I'm going to do another Doctor Who video. Thought I was done for the week, but then some news broke yesterday. I don't know if it's news so much as a dumb opinion from somebody at the BBC about the state of Doctor Who, and it confirms a lot of things that fans are feeling right now, that the BBC basically doesn't care about the ratings and the BBC doesn't care about the fandoms. The BBC will continue to make the Doctor Who the BBC wants to make. Fans be damned, ratings be damned. So we're going to talk about that. Before we get into the video, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. We're at almost 100,000 subs. That is almost as many viewers as Doctor Who lost last week, I guess. So we're getting there, guys. Thanks for the support. All right, so we've been talking about the Doctor Who ratings, that they've been bottoming out. Cosmic Book News has been kind of chronicling the decline of Doctor Who, and last week's episode was actually the worst ratings a show has had so far. For the fourth consecutive week, viewership has declined on Doctor Who, as Sunday's episode, Ascension of the Cybermen, only saw 3.71 million viewers tune in, a drop of 150,000 viewers just from the previous episode. And also a loss of over 1 million viewers since the first episode aired on New Year's Day. And if you factor in, the beginning of season 11, series 11, we're talking millions and millions of viewers. Once again, that's the lowest number for the show since way back in '86, when The Mysterious Planet Part 4 had only 3.7 million viewers tuning in. Now, I'm not exactly sure how the numbers work on this, because I actually thought that some of Capaldi's episodes had a lower number, had lower ratings than this. I thought some of them were under 3 million, but I could be wrong. I don't know. Whatever the situation is, it's bad. Whatever it is, it's bad. And Chibnall is talking about how excited he is to return to Doctor Who next year. And the ratings are bad. A lot of people have been commenting on how bad the ratings are. We've been commenting on how bad the ratings are. And here's the thing. The BBC doesn't care. The BBC does not care. From Deadline yesterday, BBC drama chief defends Doctor Who, says it's a long way from being rested amid ratings drops. So apparently all the criticism about the ratings are making their way to the top of the BBC. So the criticism is falling on deaf ears. They're hearing it, they're just not listening. They're not going to do anything about it. BBC drama chief Piers Wenger has defended Doctor Who following a drop in ratings and a mixed reception from fans for season 12 of the sci-fi drama. At a BBC drama event in London on Monday, Wenger was asked if he would consider resting Doctor Who, put it to sleep, put it down, euthanize the Doctor, given some of the malaise around the show, which is produced by BBC Studios and airs in the US on BBC America. Wenger offered a strong rebuttal in which he argued that the Time Lord franchise, starring Jodie Whittaker and overseen by Chris Chibnall, is in fine fettle. It's in fine fettle. Here are his remarks in full. I do say, I worked on Doctor Who myself and produced it for many years, and I can honestly say I don't think it's been in better health. Editorially, the production values have never been better. It's also not just funded by the BBC, it's funded by a lot of international partners. This is important because this is a big conversation happening right now in the UK with Brexit and all of that, that apparently, as I understand it, the BBC is on the verge or could potentially lose its funding, because they're not going to make it mandatory to pay a TV license to the BBC. And we'll talk a little bit about that as best as I understand it. But I think one of those international partners might be HBO. Going forward. Now, I'll talk more about that too. It's an incredibly important show for young audiences. It's still watched by families in a world where there are fewer shows that have the power to do that. Now, there are actually a lot more on like Netflix and Disney Plus, and there's a ton of stuff for families to watch that's better than Doctor Who. It will always be an important show for us, and we're a very long way from wanting to rest it. Series 12 concludes on BBC One and BBC America next weekend, but it has been dogged by disappointing ratings. Sunday's penultimate episode hit a low of 3.7 million overnight viewers. Its 7-day ratings, including catch-up, have also been far from remarkable. Meanwhile, there has been some disquiet among fans about the introduction of a second Doctor played by Joe Martin and the emergence of the Not My Doctor hashtag on Twitter. Chibnall responded to some of the brickbats in January, saying that he is only focused on making the best show possible. Here's what he said. In terms of external opinions, it's not a democracy. We make the show we want to make, he told Doctor Who magazine. We're not listening to you. We don't care. They don't care. This is very true of Doctor Who, as it is of Star Wars, as it is of Star Trek, as it is of Marvel Comics. They have certain agendas, certain kinds of stories they want to tell. Now, it's a little more brazen, I think, with the BBC. In fact, I think the BBC is actually going to war with fandom, and I'm going to talk a little more about that. But this is coming from inews.uk. BBC has a duty to be quote-unquote woke in the way it tells stories. This is coming from Piers Wenger. Piers Wenger, again. The BBC has a duty to be woke in the way they tell stories, the broadcaster's head of drama said. If the term means representing the diversity of contemporary Britain, Wenger, controller of BBC Drama, said it would be a dereliction of duty not to insert prominent black and female characters into adaptations of literary classics. Some viewers question why the BBC's Christmas Carol had created a significant role for Mary Cratchit, played by black actress Vanette Robinson. War of the Worlds, shown last year, gave a leading role to Eleanor Tomlinson, playing a character who barely features in H.G. Wells' novels. What does woke mean? The latest series of Doctor Who has also been called 2PC by some on social media over its casting and storylines. Wenger said, I really object when I hear the word woke used in a pejorative way, because what does it really mean? If it means quality being important and fair representation being important, then yes, absolutely, that is important to me. And they talk about diversity in shows, and I don't think that's that's not a bad thing, right? That's not a bad thing. I think what people are having a problem with is when there is change that doesn't make sense. Like we talked before, we did a video on Jane Austen, how people were complaining about Jane Austen novels being too white. They took place in England in the 1800s. Of course they are, but the point of this being is that this is where their head of drama is coming from. This is what their guidelines are for the BBC, because it's publicly funded. The BBC seems to be going to war with fans, and we've talked about this article multiple times because I think it's one of the most egregious misuses of a publicly funded platform in recent memory. I mean, the BBC is kind of fending off the Doctor Who critics, but they're actually using their website to basically attack fans of Sonic and Star Wars, and of course Doctor Who. Calling them out, calling them alt-right Yahtzees, etc., etc. Doing this with public money. This is kind of crap, in my opinion. This is the kind of article I would expect from Comic Book Resources or Tumblr or something like that. The Mary Sue, not the BBC. Not the BBC. It wasn't too long ago that you could go to the BBC for pretty unbiased reporting. Even here in the States, a lot of people will be like, go to the BBC, they don't have a dog in it, they'll actually give you the facts. And this is one of the most dishonest articles concerning pop culture and the pop culture wars that I've ever read, and I can't believe the BBC actually ran it. I can't. So this is probably what's going on. There is a war for the BBC, as I understand it. Again, obviously, I'm not in the UK, but just a brief rundown as I understand it. If you watch television in the UK, you pay a license for that. You're basically forced to bankroll the BBC and all the content they produce. That would be the equivalent of, here in the States, being forced to pay for PBS, the public broadcasting system. That's not how it works here in the States. In the States, we have the PBS, but the PBS relies on donations and sponsorships from businesses. It does not force the public to pay for it. You get PBS for free. Everybody can watch PBS if you even have an antenna. You don't even need a cable subscription. It's broadcast for free, along with local networks, local news, and all of that. It's paid for by advertising. Again, in the case of PBS, the programming is often paid for by donations. And this is why I think early on there was, such a relationship between the BBC and PBS, because they're kind of similar in that regard, where it is, public television, but they have very, very different business models. And actually PBS isn't as viable current year as it was in the past. And a lot of people who watch PBS grew up watching PBS, including shows like Doctor Who. Doctor Who, most of us here in the States were introduced to Doctor Who in the 70s and 80s via PBS, because they used to, run reruns of Doctor Who and Monty Python and a lot of British shows from the BBC. But they also used to interrupt all the time to beg for money. So I don't know which is the better business model. But apparently, there is discussion that, they're going to do away with this TV license. That is my understanding, which might possibly maybe change things for shows like Doctor Who, because if right now there's no financial incentive to change or cancel Doctor Who because the money's rolling in, right? I know, earlier incarnations of Doctor Who, they had a lot of merchandise and stuff like that helped, as far as I understood it. But there's no financial incentive. Here in the States, if a show performs abysmally and it's costing you money and you're not getting advertisers and your viewers are dropping off, usually the show gets canceled or retooled because of economics. That's not the case with Doctor Who. I mean, honestly, if they're so hell-bent on pushing an agenda with Doctor Who, they could literally just let the show run on autopilot, right? Whittle it down to 1,000 viewers a week, and they'll still use public money to fund it. That is my understanding. Very different business model over there than what we have here. So Downing Street declares war on BBC with a plan to abolish the license fee. A lot of people are talking about this. They're saying that this might be the only thing that changes or cancels Doctor Who at this point, is the license fee getting gone, because there's no more money to bankroll Doctor Who and it can't survive on its own. The government is planning to scrap the BBC license fee and force the corporation to operate as a subscription service, according to reports. Such a move could lead to multiple BBC and radio channels being sold off or closed in the biggest shakeup of British broadcasting in decades, according to the Sunday Times. Senior figures in Downing Street have decided the BBC needs to be dramatically cut down in size. Yeah, I don't understand. I mean, again, this is my armchair opinion from across the pond. And I do have a lot of friends in the UK, but I never understood why the BBC runs everything. I mean, it comes across to me like state-run television. I'm like, there doesn't seem to be any viable options. It's like we got 25 BBC networks cranking out all of our content. That would be like over here, Disney running everything. Oh wait, never mind. They basically do. No, but Disney owns ABC, and then we've got Comcast owns NBC, and Viacom owns CBS. So we do have multiple companies kind of vying for audience eyeballs. And PBS has been marginalized, frankly, because people don't really watch it that much. They get tired of them begging for money all the time. They've got hundreds of radio stations. They've got all these TV stations and a massive website. The whole thing needs massive pruning back. They should have a few TV stations, a couple of radio stations, and a massively curtailed online presence, and put more money into the world's service, which is part of its core job. No, its core job is to make Doctor Who and push the quote-unquote wokeness onto people with Doctor Who. That is what the money's for. Where are you getting these crazy ideas from? That's what the money's for. So this is what's going on now. There's been a fight over this. I don't know where it's at right now, but apparently Brexit is causing a lot of collateral damage, I guess, or radical change, much needed radical change. Depends on who you ask, I think. And I'm not going to pretend to understand UK politics. Again, I have friends in the UK. It seems very, very complicated. For everybody complaining about Trump over here, it seems pretty cut and dry to me compared to what's going on over there. But the long and short of it is, as I understand it, there's a lot of freaking out at the BBC because they could have their funding cut. Now, where are they going to get money for Doctor Who? This could also be what they mean by it's being funded by lots of international partners. And there are other international partners. I know Doctor Who goes to a whole bunch of other countries. But HBO Max picked up the exclusive streaming rights to Doctor Who here in the States. They confirmed there will be a season 13 and 14. It's very possible that they are going to help bankroll Doctor Who to make sure there's a 13 and 14 to appear on HBO Max. There is precedent for this. His Dark Materials was a joint venture between HBO and BBC. I believe it ran on both networks simultaneously. Now, here in the States, we basically pay our TV license to HBO or whatever it is. It's an add-on. It's not mandatory. But they do have HBO Max coming. They need content for HBO Max. They need it desperately. I think this is why shows like Supergirl and Batwoman are not being canceled, because I think Warner Brothers is like, yeah, we really need to have some content. Doesn't matter what it is. Just make sure we have a lot of shit on the network when we drop HBO Max. I think that they might be doing this. They might be helping to bankroll Doctor Who, but they might also be able to dictate what the content is if they are bankrolling it. Again, this isn't unprecedented if that is the case, because Sesame Street, which was on PBS over here, public broadcasting, HBO bought out Sesame Street. So they still run Sesame Street for free on PBS, but after it's been paid for by HBO subscriptions. Now, part of that is that, Sesame Street got kind of a makeover and the production values are better, but it also at times feels less of an educational product and more of an entertainment product. And they keep doing parodies of Warner Brothers stuff like Game of Thrones and all that. It's like, come on, guys, really? But, so there is a precedent for them taking a publicly funded show and working it into the Warner Media portfolio. And that might be what's going on with Doctor Who. I don't know. But the money's going to have to come from someplace if it's not coming from TV licenses. That might be the cart before the horse. The long and short of it is the BBC is doubling down. As long as things remain the same in the UK with the TV situation, with the BBC, Doctor Who is not going to change. It's not going to get canceled. And if you don't like the show, don't watch the show. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at right now, where I loved the show for years, ever since, Tom Baker in the 70s, watching it on PBS, then watching New Who. I think it started out on Sci-Fi, and then it moved to BBC America, and we never missed it. We never missed an episode. And I've skipped the last 2 or 3 episodes of New Who because I don't give a shit anymore. And a lot of people don't give a shit anymore. And you know what? The BBC doesn't give a shit about you. So there we go. That's where things are. So I'm going to wrap this one up. Please subscribe for more pop culture, news, views, and rants, and we'll talk later. Hey guys, thanks for watching Clownfish TV. Please consider supporting the channel. Go to clownfishsupport.com. That's clownfishsupport.com. And if you want to join our community, go to clownfishtalk.com. That's clownfishtalk.com. Please subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. We will talk to you next time.